I just when you walk them. Oh, okay. Oh no. It's like 3. People want to understand this down. Mm-hmm.
Hey Chuck, I just got a message from Craig that he's having some computer difficulties. Do you want to give it like 1 or 2 more minutes? It's
Yeah, let's give it
6:30 now.
right. So 6:30. My 6:30 right now.
All right. At 6:31, I'll give everybody the rules of the road, and hopefully
Okay.
that buys him enough time to sign on. So,
Mhm.
well, it's 6:31. Didn't push that far enough away, so since I said it, I'll do it. Welcome everyone. If this is your first time joining us virtually for one of our CB8 committee meetings, you'll notice right now that you're currently muted and you're unable to unmute yourself. The only folks who will be unmuted at any given time during the meeting are our co-chairs, Craig and Chuck, and any presenters as we move through the agenda. As we move through the agenda, the co-chairs will call on members of the public who are wishing to speak. You can participate by going to the react icon on your device and pressing the raise hand button. And it's not the wave or the thumbs up, as those will disappear. Only press the raise hand button once. If you press it a second time, your hand will go back down. If you're calling in from the phone, it's *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute. Be on the lookout for a prompt asking you to confirm unmuting once one of the two co-chairs calls on you. If you're having problems, the chat is available for technical support. It is only for technical support to help with Zoom software problems. It's not to ask questions of the co-chairs or the presenters. They will never see those chats. If you're using an older version of Zoom, you may need to go to the participant section where you'll find the raise hand feature there. And finally, we encourage you not to raise your actual hand or wave at the screen to get our attention. There's a lot of people here. We may not be able to see you. So if you're having any problems, chat me. I'm here for support. And with that, I see Chuck is here and Craig is here. And so we can get started. And Chuck, your camera is off, by the way.
Right. Okay. I want to welcome everyone to the October meeting of the Transportation Committee, the Committee Board 8. I'm Chuck Warren, the co-chair, and Craig Lader, my other co-chair. And why don't we get started? The first item on our agenda is a public hearing on a parking change requests at 1601, 1619, which is a 90th Street, and then 1823 and 1841, which is at 92nd Street. And this is Rupert Yorkville Towers. And they're requesting a change, which is from no parking to no standing. Is there someone here from who wants to present on this? Joel Burns, why don't we unmute Joel and you can take it away.
Joel, there you go.
Okay. Thank you so much, Chuck. I really appreciate you having me here, and frankly, all that everybody on the board does for the community. My name is Joel Burris, and I moved into Rupert, Yorkville for what I thought was going to be 2 months in 1983. And I guess 40 years later or so, I'm still here, having raised my family here, and very, very happy living in the Yorkville community and under the auspices of Community Board 8. I am the president of Rupert Yorkville Towers Condominium. And for those of you who don't know, and I think everybody probably does know, the condominium is a community in itself, in the sense that it's huge. It's basically 4 apartment buildings coming out of really 2 entrances that access the street. I just want to make one correction on the record. Chuck had said 1823, 1841 Third Avenue, but it's really 1623 and 1641 Third Avenue, which is the second of the buildings, but in reality, the third and the fourth, because you have in our complex over 1,200 units, 1,258 units comprised of regulated apartments, condominium units that have been sold to people who reside in them. Over a third of the building is still unsold shares, which are regulated one way or the other under the state. And many of the units have been leased as community facilities to people with disabilities. Cerebral palsy, for instance, leases at least 5 apartments that I'm aware of, 3 bedrooms. So we have a tremendous array of different people here. And I say this because I really was a little flabbergasted when I read something in one of the local blogs saying luxury East Side apartment looks to change parking and cut out accessible parking to disabled. That's the exact opposite of what we're trying to do here. Let me tell you, it's the 3rd time I've been before this board in my years with the board. And each time really relates to this in a sense. So I think everybody on the board has a good understanding of the building. In approximately 2004, we came before the board because several of the apartments were being rented as community facilities to cerebral palsy and another group at that point. And the board had to approve it and become aware of it. And that was what was approved. And the result is we have minimum of 30 residents plus their caregivers that reside in the apartment that have to have access to the street from the front door in order for their accessor van to pick them up every day. So that was the first time I came, 2004, where it was approved to have the community apartments. 2006, I came before the board because there was a cutout in front of 1601 and 1619 Third Avenue, which is on 90th Street. And that was in order for cars to pull up to the front of the building and for residents as well as disabled individuals to have access to the building. That was put in when the buildings were originally constructed. But there was never one put in on 92nd Street. So I came before the board, and the board was good enough to recognize that because of the elderly and the disabled and the number of school children in what's basically a city here, that we could have the curb cut. And it was approved, fortunately, and it was not a curb cut. I'm sorry. Let me restate that. It's a cutout in front of the building. So others couldn't park there and children wouldn't be darting across the street to get a school bus. And people in wheelchairs, et cetera, would be able to get in their accessorides without having to go through parked cars. And it was especially critical because, as everybody knows, 92nd Street is the entrance to the FDR Drive. So you have tremendous number of cars speeding through the street. Recently, you put in a speed bump, which is terrific. So 2006, I came before you and we got the cutout, which has been great. 2022, I came before you because what would be another entrance to the building, fortunately, we've maintained as a public park. And Rupert Yorkville Condominium, out of our own coffers, have been maintaining the closed street, which is wonderful. The community benefits from it, not just people in Rupert Yorkville, but as everybody knows, it's the sleigh riding hill on the Upper East Side. We've hosted many events there, movies, Halloween events, which are generally subsidized or paid completely for by the condominium. But because this is a closed street, everybody out of these two huge buildings have to funnel out of only two entrances if they're getting into cars, being 90th Street and 92nd Street. And those are the spots and the reason that I'm here for you, before you today. What has happened is the great safety situation and handicapped accessibility that we thought we were creating and created has been interpreted by many in the community, including residents of our buildings, unfortunately, as their private parking spots. And what's happened is in front of each of the buildings where it says no parking, we've had people consistently use the spots as their parking spots. And since they have medical permits, God knows for what, because I've seen a couple of them jogging in Central Park, they're able to park there and block the entrance to the building, which is completely undermining the intent that we created the cutouts for, which was to give people the access to the building, especially the handicapped. There are even situations in which individuals have taken their car out of the garages, which is very important you note this. Each one of the buildings has a complete garage in it where anybody can park, but of course you have to pay to park in it. It is not owned by the building, not owned by the condominium. It's leased to GGMC. So there is plenty of parking available. People have removed their cars from the building and decided that they have a private parking spot in front of the building, right at the front door. I'd love that too if I lived in Scarsdale and had a garage in my house. But this is New York. It doesn't work that way in my mind. As a result, I've been getting pressure for years from residents who are furious that there have been cars parked there for weeks on end. And I mentioned to somebody at DOT, actually, when we were going before DOT with you to fix the 90th Street or 91st Street, the sinkhole. And they said, well, that's a real easy thing to fix. We changed the no parking to no standing. And I kind of let it sit for a while because I don't love no standing. But it's been so abusive that I feel we have to do it now. And just so you understand what makes us different than all other apartment buildings, it's that we're really not a typical apartment building. We're a huge complex, 1,258 apartments, over 300 seniors, I'm told. I've never counted, to be honest, but I asked the property manager and she said, how could I count? She said, it's many of you. I guess I'm falling into that category too, and having had a walker several times after getting out of a hospital with new knees and new hips. You need to be able to get into cabs or whatever it is. And we also, of course, have many, many young children who get school buses. And between that and the accessoride cabs, You need a place for people to get into the vehicles without having to run into parked traffic, traffic, especially on 92nd Street, where it's an access to the FDR Drive. So really what I'm saying is that at this point, in order to provide access to disabled, access to children, and for safety concerns, we need to convert the signs from no parking to no standing. I wish we didn't have to. So I scouted the community and I said, well, I don't want to set precedent. How could we do that? Is that done by other buildings? So I looked at the other big buildings in the area, and none of them are the size of us, except for the housing complexes all the way on the east side up in 96th Street in that area. But I see that Normandy has it on 95th Street, right across the street from us. Related built the Easton. Easton has it. Carnegie Park on 93rd Street has it on the 93rd Street side. So it's not setting precedent. And I think that there are compelling reasons that we have to do it. And in fact, I think the compelling reasons were seen by this very board when you granted us the curb cut, or at least recommended that we get it. So what I'm doing now is asking if you please can bring this back to the reasonable situation for safety reasons, et cetera, for accessibility, and just change the signs for us from no parking to no standing. I also wanted, I understand that there's always concern, well, are we taking away people with play cards' ability to park? So I looked at the DOT regulations, and I see that if you have a play card, you can park at a no parking spot, which there are many of in the neighborhood. I got on the interactive map for DOT and saw all the places where there's no parking that they could be permitted. I see that if you have that placard, you can park at any meter without putting money in the meter. So it's not as though we're taking things away from the community. What we're doing is we're giving things to the community, safety. And safety is a reason why we operate the way we do all around. As I think everybody knows, our community has our own security force, which is very, very good at keeping our area, not just Rupert Yorkville, but the area clean and safe, including the park, which is all city property, the closed street. And one of the things that's even happened is our director of security has requested people who really, in our eyes, don't need to park there, to please park elsewhere, to the tone of his having been assaulted several times by people. It's outrageous.
Hey, Joel, can I suggest that you sum up? I think you understand the situation.
Summing it up, please.
And
place the signs for us.
And I think you may realize that the baseball playoffs are on tonight, and so
I'm sorry.
Might not want to.
I'm done.
Eating out too much longer.
I'm done.
And it has.
Thank you.
We won't make it any shorter than it has to be, but we don't want to stretch it out.
Yeah, everybody knows the complex and knows the problem we're facing. And I just ask that you recommend or approve changing the signs. And that's it. I've said too much already. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Okay, let's go to the public first. If there are members of the public that want to speak on this, and I see some hands recognized, and I'll go to Donna Messenger. I see someone on an iPhone, and they'll have to identify themselves. I don't know who that is. So why don't we unmute Donna?
All right, Donna, go ahead and unmute. Look for a prompt on your device to confirm. And then if you'd like to participate, you can go to the react icon on your device and press the raise hand button.
Yep, thank you. Actually, I was with Joel in 2006, 2007 when we asked for that, I don't know what to call it, layaway. And that was because, as he said, that we needed more room for cars to come in closer to the building. In particular, I just want to say that I'm in a wheelchair and I parked in the garage, but when I have people that drop me off, I needed to get close to the curb and there was nowhere to do that with people double parked. Now it's an issue where there are cars, if someone's taking me home or I get an Uber or I get a taxi, and they drop me off at 92nd Street so I could get in the building, just like everybody else, there are cars that are parked there that don't move. So I have to get out of the taxi, out of the Uber, go up the street, and especially at night, that's pretty dangerous, to the curb cut, get on the sidewalk, come down. So it's not only for people with this, it's for people with disabilities, but there are many people that could benefit from this. It's really annoying to have somebody parking there and you're trying to get in the building and you can't do so. So there's me, there's, as Joel said, there are people that take Accessoride, Uber, taxis. You know, if the car is in the way, you can make the step up onto the sidewalk. I can't. Other people in wheelchairs can't. The elderly with their walkers have a hard time, I'm sure. Strollers. I mean, it's a no-brainer really when you think about it. There are plenty of places for people to park, but that's not a parking spot. That's a spot for people to get out of the car and get in to the building.
Thank you. Thank you, Don. Next, Fran Prince. Next, can you see a prompt?
Hi, I was asked to come here not because of parking, but because a year ago, Labor Day, and not much before that, I've been in a hit and run with a bicycle. Last time I broke my elbow and I needed stitches, I needed surgery, and it has left me with a great fear of crossing the street, of walking on the sidewalk. I need the city to do something. I'm not the only one that I know that has been in this kind of a situation. I can't walk down the block without almost being run over. I can't cross the street without having to look.
Fran, let me interrupt. Is this about this issue?
Fran, unless this is on the public hearing that we're discussing, you can speak during the later portions of the meeting. Okay. Do you want me to unmute the iPhone person and see if they'll identify themselves?
Okay.
Hi, I'm sorry. I didn't. I'm the iPhone person. I didn't realize that I didn't have a name attached. Gemma Weidman. I live in 1601. I would like to give a dissenting opinion. We've never experienced an issue with having access, and it seems that what is a sometimes problem for some people will be an all the time problem for most people if we can't, I don't know, unload our car and take the car seat out, go get a cart from inside without being at risk of getting a ticket. Because if it's no standing, it's really only for less than 5 minutes, and anyone with a kid and a car seat and a suitcase and some groceries knows that it takes much longer than that to get anything done. This seems like almost a punishment for a couple of people that would make it much more difficult for the majority of people who actually do live in the building. And I'm not saying that people with disabilities shouldn't have access to it, but this seems like an extreme way to go about that by taking away what everyone is enjoying. And that's
Gemma, I might say that under the no standing rules, you are allowed to stop and drop off and stuff. And you can't spend a lot of time, but in general, the police don't ticket people for doing some of the things that you were talking about. And in fact, since I happen to live right across, there on 90th Street. I've never seen the police move anybody along. That's part of the problem, I assume, that Joel and Donna and the others are, have seen. Anyway, we understand your point. Okay, David Torbati, next one. David.
Yes, hi. Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can
Can
hear
every-
you. Yes, we
Okay,
can hear you,
great.
David.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. I don't think I've been gaslit this much in my life. But thank you for letting me speak. The Joel seemed to say he was saying that only people, we're taking away the rights of people with disabilities to park so that we can allow people with disabilities to use the area. And sort of didn't make sense. The board has been doing this for a very long time. Their management style has been against people with disabilities. They put in a rule recently that said people can't sit or stand or talk or wait or hang out in the lobbies. And one of the security guards kicked a young lady named Victoria out who's severely disabled because of this new rule that they can't hang out in the lobbies. And her caretakers bring her down for 1 hour a day and to get some fresh air out of her apartment. And the board doesn't want her there. And when I asked the board about it, they said, don't you want a classy place to live? Don't you want, you don't want all these caretakers and all these people are hanging around in the lobby. They don't want us there. They don't like the disabled, and that's not fair to other people. Now, he also mentioned in a public setting, thank you very much, Joel Burris. He mentioned in a public, he mentioned in a public setting, I'm talking, Joel. He mentioned in a public setting that his director of security was assaulted several times. He's talking about me. His director of security hit me. It's on video. There's litigation and there's lawsuits going on about this. It's on video. The cops have already been involved. And then he said to me, "It's because of you we don't like Jews." And then when I told Joel about it, Joel said, "I don't want to talk to you because I don't want to get recorded
Listen,
with
Mr.
my
Torbati,
response."
Mr.
And then
Torbati,
he said,
Mr. Torbati, please, let's not talk about a lot of this internal stuff. Stick to the issue. You want to talk about it, stick to the issue. We don't want to have a back and forth and an insult here. That's not what we do with this committee. And you're muted, so you can't talk, so we're not hearing you. And
Joel brought it up, not me.
well,
Joel brought it up. Thank you. I appreciate it. And then he told me Hitler should have finished the job. And this
we're not gonna, I'm sorry, we're not gonna continue this conversation before with that kind of, we're not getting into that. And you can't be heard, you're muted. Now, if you want to continue and make a point that you don't want this to happen, please continue. Okay? We'll give it one more try.
Okay, one more try. The issue is, please don't mute me. I'm sticking to the point. Joel brought this up, which is why I reacted. The reason this is relevant, before you mute me, is because the director of security continued to put threatening notes on people's cars. And when I went in there to ask him, please stop putting notes on my cars, that's when he hit me. Okay, and it's all recorded. So now, putting all of that aside, he also said, in order to provide access to the disabled, we need to take away disability access. That sounds very political to me. Sounds like a very politician thing to say. I never have problems leaving the building, nor does anybody else. I'm in a group called the RY Moms Group because I'm a stay-at-home dad. In the RY Moms Group, they are livid about this. So you should read what's been going on in the past day or two when they found out you guys want to change the signs, and everybody's upset with it, although none of them are on here. But they are all very livid about this. The entire community is upset about it. This is not the right way to have done it. And and I think people with disabilities don't appreciate when RY tells them that they don't have a valid disability. The Department of Transportation and the Department of Health are the ones who go through your medical records and decide whether or not being hit by a truck and not being able to walk for a couple of years designates you as a disabled person. Not Joel Burris, not RY management. Please maintain the rights of the community. Please maintain the rights of the people who need those spots. Please maintain the rights of the disabled at Rupert Yorkville Towers, because the board sure isn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to Angela DeWood. You unmute Angela.
Hello. Hi, thank you so much for having me. I don't know that this is the exact time for me to speak, only because I do want to discuss the bike lane on 2nd Avenue in front of Carnegie East House Assisted
No,
Living.
this is no.
Please come back to me.
We will. Okay,
Thank
thank
you.
you, Angela. Okay, David Weiss, next. You unmute David.
Yes, hello, and thank you for hosting this meeting. I've never been to one of these meetings. It's very interesting, and I think all points should be heard. I'm a longtime resident at Rupert Towers on 1601, and I recall when the curb indent was created. And for many years, I don't think I ever saw anyone parking overnight in those spaces. And yeah, we're a very crowded building. We're a very big building. Everything said is valid. There are people picking up and dropping off, people who need to be dropped off right in front. In my view, the most important 20 feet or 30 feet in front of that huge complex on each side has to be free of vehicles parked for extended periods of time. There are Ubers that sometimes sit there, and since they're idling in the car, they don't move. Okay, there are people who obviously with handicapped placards, which obviously I have no interest in discrediting anyone's handicap. By the way, I feel that the community is best served by there being no standing, so that area moves freely from cars that do not remain there for hours or days or even multiple days. It just really takes away the space from the functioning of the building. And also, one last point, the bike lane on 90th Street is right next to the second lane, meaning that when you can't park in front of the building, 2 and 3 cars deep block the bike lane. That is an infringement on the bike lane. You should not be forced to drop off people from a handicap bus by having half your vehicle in the bike lane. And that does happen all the time, all week long. There are, and I do sympathize with people who do park right in front of the building with handicap placards. There's even people with fire department placards who park there overnight. There are other DOT people who might park there. I've seen a lot of vehicles. But just within 100 feet of the building, there are 9 or 10 no parking spaces. I understand if you can't walk 50 feet. I'm sorry. This is a city where everyone competes for parking spaces everywhere with every condition. That is the point of New York City. If you cannot park in the garage, if you cannot get a ride, then these are the limits of life in New York City. We cannot reasonably block dozens or hundreds of people from effectively using the entrance to a building because someone is used to parking in a very advantageous place for themselves, handicap or not. I think the community is best served by giving the most people the most access for the most reasons. And that's my piece. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Next, Mark, if you'll identify your full name, Mark. Do we unmute Mark?
Hi, this is Mark Feinberg. I wanted to speak. I live in Yorkville Towers, which is 1641. So we're on the 92nd Street side. And similar to what David said, I frequently see cars parked in the cutout for long extended periods overnight. I witnessed the accessorized buses having trouble dropping people off. Other handicapped people having difficulty. Donna lives in my tower, who spoke earlier. And it hurts me because it's the benefit of a few is infringing on the rights of the many. Several people with handicaps or disabilities or people with young children trying to unload their cars are double parked, backing up 92nd Street, which is a major thoroughfare to the FDR. So it's, that's my opinion is it's the benefit of a few to be able to park overnight. Whereas David said, there's lots of no parking spots all up and down 92nd Street and 90th Street, to the detriment of the many.
Thank you, Mike. Next is Ryan L. If you'll identify yourself fully. Go ahead, Ryan. We can hear you.
Yes. So my name is Ryan Leoniak. I live in 1601 10D. So my concern when just coming into the meeting was to see if for some reason this might have been more of like a personal injustice towards a particular person, because it seemed like it got a little directive with the initial, I guess, allegations of whether or not there are vehicles taking up this spot. And I was just kind of posing a question which seemed to have an answer, but not a full and clear one, with who can, I guess, justify giving out tickets, and whether or not these individual bases of people being parked in these areas, because not everyone can say that they are an eyewitness to this happening. Of course, people can take pictures, but then again, it's like, it's up to security to worry about the areas outside of the building, like you said. So I was just curious if these individual bases, because it doesn't seem like we have random cars that are using our parking, especially random cars with handicap space accessibility. But if those people are known to live in the building, is this something that can be held to personal accounts, or they can be brought up like this in front of the board, and we can say like, hey, we have noticed between these hours, these particular 4-hour periods, your car seems to be in parking. And then maybe just contacting these people to say, we understand that you have the right to be here, but is it necessary at the moment? We have this handicap vehicle coming in, so would you mind circling the block for the moment and then coming back? So that was just my question, whether or not these things could be handled personally before it comes down to everyone that gets sort of the justification put on them just for living here. And I think that's really all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ryan. Okay, next is Gabrielle Villanueva. Please.
Hi, thanks so much. I'm a resident also of Rupert, Yorkville. I'm also in the said moms group. I don't remember seeing a David Torbati in the group, but I think the concern, as Gemma had mentioned as a member of the group, about the clarification, whether no standing really means that you can't unload your car. And thank you, Chuck, for clarifying that you would be able to unload your car. And so it seems, not to be redundant of what the others have mentioned and said very well, but it seems like the cutout should have always been no standing as opposed to no parking, because that's the intention of the curb cutout, to alleviate traffic while people are loading and unloading, whether it's passengers or items from their cars. So, there's no reason that there's a length of each block, 90th and 92nd, that has no parking, and that is very accessible. Close family members use it when they come to see us. They don't park on the cutout. They park in the spots along the regular part of the curb. It's really important to maintain that. However, as it was said, the benefit for many is really important here, as opposed to a few that use it for extended periods of time on a regular basis, as opposed to finding a more permanent solution for their vehicles when they're not in it. I don't think it's fair to have the board have to engage on a daily basis to where we can just correct this for not having cars that are parked there unnecessarily. Thank you.
Thank you. People who haven't spoken before, Oliver Brukoff. You know me, Oliver.
Yes, hello. I don't live in the area. I'm at 500 East 77th Street, but I do have a parking placard for my daughter. So I kind of look at it from both ways, and I just looked at the Google Maps street view on these buildings with the cutouts. So I would appreciate a clarification. the request that was online in the minutes said to make these streets no standing. The whole street would seem excessive to me entirely.
No,
If
that's
you're
not-
talking just
that's
about
not
the
what-
cutouts,
Yes,
then I would find that a reasonable request. For clarification, yeah, the no standing does allow for unloading of passengers and passengers only. And the
all of
person
them.
driving the car needs to stay with the car, which I think is what is the intention of the cutouts in the first place. And that seems reasonable to me. No parking means anybody with a placard, not just disabled placards, but anyone else who in the city has a placard can stand indefinitely in that kind of area. That's not what the cutouts were made for. So I'd agree with that request.
Yeah, I think your clarification is appropriate. It's not for the whole street. It's just for the areas that are cut out in front of the buildings. Next, there's someone that just says iPad. If you could identify yourself, please.
So if you have your hand up and you are on an iPad and
Hi,
you,
yes, I'm trying to
There you go.
operate the controls here. Hi, I don't have a comment on this. I'm waiting for the next topic. Thank you, and I'm sorry to interrupt. I'm not able to add my name on my screen. I don't know why. Thank you.
That's okay. All right, we're going to go to the board now because everybody has spoken at least once, and I think at this point, I want to see if there's board members that want to comment or do anything. Rita Popper.
I live in that complex. Only I live down the hill, and we don't have that curb cut. But I do a lot of work between the three buildings, and I walk up that street very often and down 90th and up 92nd Street, and there are generally gentlemen sitting in the cars at those entrances where there is that indentation. Those are Ubers, and they stand there. And then an accessoride has to double park, and that's an entrance to the FDR Drive, and it's downhill. These are narrow streets, and there's parking on the other side. So this really eliminates traffic on that, a traffic jam on that street as it does on 90th Street. I wholeheartedly support no parking because no standing has not worked.
You mean the other way around? I think
It's the other way around.
I'm sorry. No,
you support no standing because no parking happening.
right. Whatever that's the one that we really need to. Accessoride doesn't just pull up and it takes a while to get a person in a wheelchair into the accessoride. It takes a while to get the person out. The ambulettes are double parked. All they want to do, they're not standing there. They just want to park and to take in or deposit or bring back the patient. So I wholeheartedly support that there be no standing, and I hope the board supports that too.
Thank you, Rita. Paul Crickler next, and then me, Paul.
Thank you, Chuck. I fully support this proposal. Apart from the reasons given by people who live there, that's not the intention. The intention is to have it be clear for people who need it. I also go past that an awful lot on my bike, and it's very dangerous because, as some people have pointed out, there are ambulettes there. There's school buses sometimes. There are people getting out of Ubers if they need assistance, and it makes it dangerous not just for those people, but for the rest of us using the street. So I think this is a very good idea.
Thank you, Paul. Michelle Birnbaum, I believe, is next. Michelle.
Yeah, thanks, Chuck. I'm just not clear on a few things.
On the agenda, it talks about the entrances on Third Avenue, and yet I'm hearing discussion of 92nd Street. So can you clarify for me exactly where the no parking is now?
Yes. Let me give you the request that it was submitted it says East 90th Street, North Side, and East 92nd Street, North Side, from 3rd Avenue to 2nd Avenue. Building address 1601-1609 3rd Avenue and 1623-1641 3rd Avenue. That's the address.
Oh, okay. So there is you're not talking about any change on Third Avenue. You're
No.
talking about it on 90th and on 92nd.
Correct, Michelle.
Okay, I wanted clarification for that. The other clarification is you're not talking about, when you talk about a carve out, are you talking about like a mini driveway? You're not talking about a curb cut. Can you describe what you mean by a carve out, that you have a carve out?
Maybe Paul could put this.
Go ahead. You want to?
Yeah, or I could try doing it also.
You want to go ahead if you want to.
No, I have it up. I can put it up on the screen.
Yeah, to show it, it's
So
on 90th Street. It's right across from me. It's at, you see where it is? There's the Rupert Towers. It goes one way. And
oh, I see. Okay.
It's not
okay. And that was meant. The intent of that was to get vehicles closer to the building, out of the bike lane, out of the traffic, because it's an access street. Okay,
right.
And that's where you're claiming that the like there's a Verizon, for example, standing there. Now, all right, I'm sympathetic to everybody here. Those people with disabilities who have placards that entitle them to park in no parking. They're part of the community too. They live in that building as well. They are not the majority, but they do live there. And there are other people with special needs that live there, older people. Suffice it to say, it's a very, very diverse and large residential population, no matter what kind of unit they're living in. There's a lot of people living there. Is that the only amount of space that you're talking about? You don't want to expand this down the block or up the block?
No. It's only
just in that spot. And that seems to
right.
take around, I would say, what, about 3 spots? Is that about 3 spots?
No, it's probably more than that, I would think. Hydrant is a hydrant. Let's see, one. It's probably more like 1, 2, 3.
Oh, I see. It goes all the way down. Oh, sure. It's more like 6 or 7 or more.
Yeah.
All right.
That's about right.
And then what's the parking on the rest of the street? Is it alternate sides?
No, well, here it is. It's a variety, because I happen to live I can speak in the 90th Street side because I live right across from there on 90th Street. And some of it is alternate side of street parking, but there's a lot of no parking zones there on both sides of the street.
But just on that side where that carve out is, both south of it, both east of that spot and west of that, what are the parking regulations?
On west of that, there's like a fire hydrant on 90th Street I can speak about. There's a fire hydrant, and you can't really park west of that. There's not really
So there's virtually no. And what about east of that?
East of that, it goes down there. There's a garage entrance, but there's also on 90th I'm talking about. There's also no parking spots in a bunch of places there that go down.
So there's no parking there.
It's not all no parking. There's some alternate side parking too.
On that side of the street.
Yeah, closer to 2nd Avenue particularly, but
okay. Here's why I ask. In an effort to try to accommodate everybody or most people, it seems a very big part of this is also the lack of enforcement. If you have 7, 8 spots in that carve out, to me, it didn't seem as though you had them all placards from people who had disabilities. So you had some kind of a mixture. You had Accessoride standing there. You had Spectrum, which you saw. You had a disability placard. You had somebody who's completely illegally parked. So you have a whole big combo. It would seem to me that since that's about 8 spots, and if you want to accommodate everybody, and the fact that that people who shouldn't be are parking in a no parking zone, that's an enforcement issue. If you think no standing is going to improve that dramatically, I submit that's not going to happen, because I suspect that won't be enforced either. But let's just say, and it's about 8 spots from what I could very roughly seem. Why don't we may I suggest, no standing covering 2 spots that are actually the entrance of the building, and leaving the rest no parking, so that the placard people can park there. The people who are illegally parking on all different levels for every reason, that's an enforcement issue that no regulation is going to necessarily help. But in terms of accommodating most people who live in this building, if we could leave part of it no parking, so that the people with disability and placards can park there, and then part of it no standing right at the entrance, so that those who need to get right to the entrance and just quickly load and unload, that can accommodate them. So that's what I would suggest at the moment, without any additional information. Thanks.
Okay, I saw, let's see, I don't know whether, Sebastian, I thought you had your hand up, but I guess you put it down. Oh, okay. Rita, did you want to comment on that?
Yeah, how do I raise my hand?
Yes, it's not 8 spots. It's 2 spots in front of the door, and there is, a curve in and where you cannot park. So we're talking about 4 spots. Those spots were never open anyhow, because it's the entrance to a building, just as it is on Park Avenue or whatever. The reason that my building is not involved in this is because my entrance is on 2nd Avenue. Their main entrance is on the closed street that Dave Rosenstein and I spent 4 years to get designated by the DOT as a pedestrian plaza, so that it would always remain free. And we were afraid of sanitation trucks coming up. Meanwhile, we have a bike rack that is one of the longest in the city on that particular block. And we just had over 100 exhibitors for an art show. That block, where they can't get into a car cannot get into the entrance of the buildings that are facing 91st Street. So there is only 90th, there's only 92nd Street. They are narrow streets. 92nd Street is the entrance to the FDR Drive. When a car is double parked or there's a bottleneck that you can't get down that street. And it has been, since the no standing has been there and not effective, because people know they're not going to get a ticket. Every car I see there that's parked in those spots has a driver in the car waiting for their next. So therefore, those are drivers, Ubers. Those are private cars without anything. We just want to protect the people. If there are 300 people who are handicapped in these 2 buildings, that is a large number, and we really need to give them the space to get into an ambulance, into an accessoride, into whatever is needed. So I'd appreciate your vote for this. it's just a vote, really a humanity vote. Thank you.
Joel, before we go in, could you clarify how many spaces there are in the cutout? I mean, I don't, you know.
It differs on each building, so I'm glad you asked that. It differs in each building. We're now looking at Yorkville. Yorkville has enough for 2 to 3 cars, at the most 3. That's if they're crammed in. The other building has more. The other building is a longer space. But and it's not just people sitting in the cars. While I love Rita and I appreciate what she's saying, this has turned into people's personal parking spots. And it's often the same people. And I know one where the person was parking there for 3 weeks. It was a guy from New Jersey who left his car there. It's just become abusive to the detriment of the people who live in the building. But understand that the parking spots on the one in front of Rupert on 90th Street, that was built in 76 or so when the building was built. And that's larger than the one that we built on 92nd Street. So 92nd Street, the most you'd get 3 cars in, it's really 2 cars.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
And if I could just add, I was just looking myself, that is absolutely correct. Rupert is a much larger space. But interestingly, if you look at street views going back in time, in every street view, you will see multiple cars parked in there. And in some instances, you have pretty much the whole area that is filled with cars. And I think that's just indicative of the fact that it is an issue where there are often cars parked there. And at least the intent clearly to have the space was to have cars be able to pull in and out rather than be there over lengthy periods. The only thing that I was also going to suggest, whether it's part of this discussion or something that we may want to come back to, is we do have New York City DOT's neighborhood loading zone program that has been implemented, and there are loading zones in the vicinity of the area. According to the map, there's one on 91st, just off of 3rd, between 3rd and Lex, and then there's one at Lexington and 90th. There's one down at 90th and 2nd, but there are none on 90th or 92nd alongside those blocks. So perhaps we may want to consider whether there should be any neighborhood loading zones to allow for that intermediate period where it may not be the most expeditious pickup or drop off of deliveries of sorts, or for a longer loading and unloading, but it also allows for something that would still have parking be permitted overnight. So that's something that you may want to have on that block, and that would allow for the no standing to serve its purpose in front of these buildings.
Okay, that's Sebastian. You haven't chatted on this, so why don't you go ahead? You want to meet Sebastian? Yeah.
Thank you, Chuck. I'd like to move that we vote to approve this application as originally submitted.
Is there a second? I see that Paul Crickler and then you, okay. Any further discussion here at the board? Okay, Michelle?
Yes, I would just like to say that in light of the differences in size of these 2 areas, I think they should be treated differently. I don't think we should take them up in one resolution, because what might work for the smaller one may be all standing. I don't necessarily think would be great for the larger one, where there are clearly many, many, many more parking spots. So I would like these to be broken up into 2 resolutions.
Well, Sebastian, I guess we could break them up.
You'd have to rebuild the street.
No.
No, I don't mean break up the street. I mean break up our discussion.
No, but you'd have to redo a lot of construction work to do that, because it's an inset.
No, what she's saying is we vote on 2 separate resolutions, one for 90th,
one for each inset. That's yeah.
Okay. Now Rita doesn't. It is too, although I guess the matter was presented as a joint resolution. It's sort of a little bit of conundrum here. Sebastian's motion covers both of them. Well, why don't we, I guess, why don't we just proceed on, see where we are with Sebastian's motion in second. It's been seconded. Is there further discussion? Judy Schneider?
I'd like to call the question on Sebastian's resolution as written.
I understand. Okay. All right. So we're calling the question. This is the discussions among for the public. This is just our discussions among the board members on the resolution here. Okay.
I'll read the roll.
Read the roll. If you're in favor, you don't have to say anything. If you're against this, you should raise your hand so you can be recorded. Okay.
Okay. It's myself, Chuck, Alita, Ed, John McClement, Judy, Lori, Michelle, Paul, Rita, Sebastian, Stephanie.
Okay. Okay. So if there's anyone, if you don't have to do anything, anyone opposed or abstaining or something else, raise their hand. Stephanie Reckler?
No.
Okay. Michelle?
No.
Anyone else? Can you see anyone else? Let's see if there's anyone else who voted for that. We have 2 no votes, and I guess everyone else is positive. Okay.
Yep, that's a 10-2.
This resolution was approved, and it'll come up before the full board on, I believe it's the 23rd, 2 weeks from now. Okay. Let's go to our next item. And this is the consideration of 2 pieces of legislation, and they both cover the same subject. It's intro number 606, which is a bill introduced in the city council to amend the administrative code of the city of New York in relation to requiring that every bicycle with electric assist and electric scooter and other legal motorized vehicles be licensed and registered. That's a local city law if passed. And the other is an assembly bill that was, and that's again to do the same thing, an act to amend the vehicle and traffic law, the state vehicle and traffic law, in relation to requiring bicycles with electric assist and electric scooters be registered with the Department of Motor Vehicles. In the case of the city, it would be the DOT. Is there someone here who wants to talk about the legislation? I don't know. Do we have any the local legislation I know was Council Member Menon is one of the sponsors of it. I don't know if there's anyone here who wants to talk about that from the council member's office. If not, and also in the assembly woman Seabright is one of the introducers of the bill, and I don't know if there's anyone from Assembly Member Seabright's office that wants to talk about it. Do we have anybody, Will, here? Do we know?
I don't believe we have anybody from the city council or the assembly here.
Okay. All right. So why don't we then get some members of the public, and I know here someone who's been a proponent of doing this for some time is here, and that's Andrew Fine, so we'll recognize Andrew.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Thanks, Chuck. I'd actually, and Craig, I'd actually ask that you please get back to me, and I'd like to let the victims of e-bike accidents, crashes speak. But I would like to say before they speak, I would ask that after spending an hour considering 9 parking spots, we have 50,000 wanton and lawless and unaccountable e-bikes roaming the streets. And I just ask that we have this discussion and that we don't get cut off like we have in the past, that we give this a full hearing. And, you know, please don't say, we're running out of time, folks. The Mets are have the bases loaded. And I just ask that you give this a full hearing. Thank you very much. And please call on me after the victims speak. Thank you.
I think if you'll look at the history, Andrew, of our committee, we give a fair hearing to everybody, no matter what the subject is. At a point when things get redundant and people are just repeating themselves, that's when we try to keep people moving along so that everyone can be heard on some of the things they want to be heard on.
Or when people get personal and make comments. that are,
yes.
Like
When
we had
they,
before.
right, yes, that when they veer into those things. Okay, so let's Janet Schroeder call on, please.
Hi.
Go ahead.
I'm also not a victim, so if you could call on me, we had a few victims that couldn't stay on, Fran Prince and another. We also have almost 100 victims. So I found about this last minute, we just had a few that were on to talk. I know one, actually a couple of them. You'll see the name P. Bryan. You'll see the name Carrie Michaels.
Yep.
There may be another under iPhone, and then I'd like to maybe speak after that, Andrew and I. So if you don't mind, I know that Carrie Michaels and P. Bryan are victims.
Okay, well, so we're flying a little blind here since we don't know who everybody is and what their status is, but why don't we go to Carrie Michaels then first? Go ahead, you can unmute Michael. See a prompt there.
Yeah, Carrie, you should be looking for something on your device that'll pop up that says the host would like you to unmute.
There it is. Okay.
You're on. You're good.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everyone. Thanks, everyone, for staying on the call to hear what our concerns are about this issue. I am a cyclist. I am not an anti-bike person at all. On the contrary, I'm a veteran cyclist at this point. I even fundraise for charity and cycling events and groups. So I'm very passionate about cycling in this city and keeping cycling safe. I am not, however, a member of Transportation Alternatives and have many disagreements with their policies of allowing and encouraging people to not wear helmets and to ride their bikes on sidewalks and to ride the wrong way in the bike lane and to run across crosswalks. All of these things are behavior that is just consistent with rogue cycling. And Priscilla's Law, which Janet and Andrew can really further define, I'd like to talk about being struck by e-bike delivery people twice, and nearly struck many times by city bike riders, both as a cyclist and as a pedestrian. I was struck a year ago in the park, a year and a half ago now, while cycling in the park by a delivery bike, probably going about 35 miles an hour, crashing into me through a crosswalk, he was coming out of a pedestrian walking area in the park, which was specifically designated for pedestrians, not cyclists. And I was in the lane and he was attempting to pass me. No signal, no horn, no, hey, I'm passing you, nothing. Just unconscious behavior, more likely than not looking at his phone for his next delivery. And this entire situation of both e-bike and city bike, both of them, has become an increasingly quality of life issue. It is endangering people on a daily basis. It is a silent, an unknown menace creeping up on people, left, right, back, side, front. And as I lay on the ground with an ambulance on the way, already a member of this group and already fighting for and in trying to work with legislators for the past several years on legislation, it's unconscionable to me that this bill has not gone through yet. We have people in our group that have been permanently injured. We have people with traumatic brain injuries. We have people that will never ride or run again. I speak of my injury as a fortunate individual. I didn't get up, but I was transported to the ER. It took several months of recovery last summer. And I don't want this to happen to anyone else. thank you for your time. I'm ready to move on to other people, and we appreciate you hearing this. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go to Ms. Bryan, P. Bryan. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Patty Bryan, and I'm a biker as well. I can remember I was one of the first people to sign up for City Bike. I can remember riding on the bike path at night when nobody else would be there, and I'd sort of be scared, that somebody might try and mug me or something. So I am, I love riding bicycles around the city, but I don't anymore. I gave up my city bike because I was hit. I was not on my bike. I was crossing 9th Avenue and 23rd Street. I was coming home from a play. I was minutes from my apartment, and out of nowhere, I was crossing with the white person on the signal, and out of nowhere came a e-bike, one of the ones that has the big fat tires, and I went down. I had tire tread. I mean, I was not injured seriously, but I do remember going down and thinking, will I ever get up from this? I had huge tire tracks on my legs. I had a big gash in my head, and my head hit so hard that I had vertigo for quite some time because I had 3 canals that got all messed up, the crystals in 3 of them. So I was just spinning all over the place. So, I'm just for getting rid of the chaos in these streets. It's no longer safe to be on the bike lanes. It's no longer safe to be on the bike path. People are whizzing past you on the left and right. And, I could go on and on, but I won't because I like the Mets too. But you get my point. It's dangerous. It's very dangerous. And I feel very lucky to be alive and here talking to you tonight. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Now I'll just go across. Let me go Ron Wisniewski next.
Sorry, who is that? Ron Winsowski?
Wisniewski.
Oh, yes, there you go.
To the left. Okay. Go ahead, you're on.
My name is Ron Wisniewski. Thank you for hearing us. I'd just like to say a word about sometimes the victims of these e-bike accidents aren't really accidents because they're breaking the law by riding the wrong way, going through red lights, riding on the sidewalks, and they're causing innocent people to have horrible, life-changing injuries. Now, what got me involved in this issue 2.5, 3 years ago was a woman named Pam Manassi, who I heard her speak about her being run down as she left Lincoln Center. She was a cellist. She has permanent brain damage. She lost her career as a cellist. And the stories I could tell you right now about other victims, a woman, her name is Sonia, who is recently, she just kept repeating over and over again, I have no hope. I have no hope because of the injuries that she suffered due to the selfish, entitled behavior of these bike riders. And I think that if you look at it that way, can't we just get a hearing in the city council? The speaker of city council just will not bring that bill to the floor for debate. It may never pass, but shouldn't it have a hearing? What's the problem here? The majority of city council supports it. I think the vast majority of people in the city support, and I don't have to tell any of you on this board, if that you live in the city, you know exactly what I'm saying. It's chaos. It's dangerous. It needs to be regulated, and enforcement needs to happen. It should have happened 3 years ago. So that's all I'll say. And thank you for hearing us. And I hope you'll endorse these bills. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Let's go back. Sandy next, I believe. Can you go ahead?
Hello, thank you for having me.
Can you identify your full name, Sandy, for the record?
Sure, Sandy Rayburn, and I'm from the Hood, from Brooklyn. But the last time I looked, I was part of New York City. And the last time I looked, I'm a frequent pedestrian in Manhattan. And, you talk about bases being loaded. The truth is that the blocks are loaded. They are loaded with city bikes, unregulated, going without any kind of control, without any kind of guidance, loaded with deliveristas, running roughshod, terrorizing. And I feel like I am the next bowling pin about to go down. So far, I haven't been hit. I'm going to be 80. I know I don't look it. That's what I expect to see. Smiles. Like, of course not. And I have an 86-year-old husband who is hearing impaired, walks with a walker. We are constantly in terror on our Brooklyn streets, and it is totally unconscionable. And we understand that bikers who are interested in pedal biking are doing this for health and for the environment. But the exploitation, basically by venture capitalist investors who own city bike shares, are not going to tell us that they are doing this to save the planet. We don't buy it. And the stewards of our safety, supposedly the city council, seem to be reluctant to step up. So we count on our community boards, unfortunately, many of whom have ringers who are in fact lobbyists one way or the other for transportation alternatives. But we count on you, whether it's CB8, you in Manhattan, or my CB2 in Brooklyn, to speak for us, to demand, to insist that our safety is certainly as important as the safety of a biker. And so I hope that you will support these bills in the City Hall underway right now. Thank you so much for having me. Come visit me in the hood. I'll look forward to having you there.
Thank you, Susan. Okay, let's go to Liam Jeffries.
Hello. So, in regards to all this, I want to remind tonight's attendees that restricting e-bikes and punishing their riders, that is not new. As many of you will recall, only until a few years ago, e-bikes were in a legal gray area in the city. Now, the problem with this is that when e-bikes were still in this legal gray area, it was the policy of Bill de Blasio for the NYPD to confiscate them if they were deemed illegal. It was claimed that this enforcement would be equitable, that it would apply to all applicable e-bikes. But in reality, and this is a reality that is common a lot across most enforcement regimes in New York City, Latino and Asian New Yorkers were subject to such a rampant level of discrimination on this front by enforcing officers that one of the big reasons why e-bikes were legalized is because of the fact that these riders were saying we are the ones getting enforced, we are non-white cyclists who are under this enforcement, white cyclists are not. So basically, the reason why these e-bikes are legal is because the enforcement policies, many of which are being endorsed again as we speak, were applied so discriminately when they were last enforced that one of the big pillars into legalizing e-bikes was the fact that the discrimination in their enforcement just simply could not be solved. This goal is not secret. In fact, Los Deliveristas Unidos, one of the main advocacy groups for immigrant delivery cyclists here, was founded in part on this principle, the fact that they already lead a very, very difficult life in the sense that they are under very strict economic conditions. And for that matter, many of them simply cannot afford to not work a day because their economic conditions are that strenuous. And they exist mainly because they wanted a voice to help guide policy on this because they care about safety too. And they're usually just targets of it as opposed to players in it. So, and as such, there have been plenty of discussions that have happened in the last few years, and there have been several good bills from that that have actually been praised wildly in the sense that there are a lot less battery fires now, far less battery fires now than there were before. And the reason why partially is because these bills were passed and these delivery cyclists had a seat at the table. And it's been fine. Now, I wanted to speak on this too, the fact that these have been going on in this policy discussion circles for a while, and most policy discussion circles on this include these riders. EVCA simply hasn't. Like, I have noted that when Electric Vehicle Safety Alliance and other groups like it have talked about these things and talked about safety issues are not strictly their domain. That is something that is talked about all the time with e-bikes. Like, they don't bring these people in. They don't bring these people in. In fact, if anything, their coverage of them just denigrates them wholeheartedly. And in all honesty, based on the script, based on the materials they have of them, like, it gets really kind of offensive. Like, if you look at their Twitter page right now, they're just going after immigrant delivery cyclists. Like, that's really all they're doing. So it's like, I just want to say that, so there's safety things that should be talked about in this, but this is not a serious discussion. Like, this is not a serious discussion because you do not have these people as parties here. If you're targeting them, you're not including them in the thing. So that's all I have to say on this.
All right, Angela DeWood is next.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Wow, that really changed the trajectory of the conversation a little bit with what Liam had to say. I simply disagree with most of what he had to say. I'm here on behalf of Carnegie East House Assisted Living. We're on 2nd Avenue in between 95th and 96th. 2nd Avenue bike lane is our front yard. We serve the older adult population of the Upper East Side and various areas in the outer boroughs. And when I say that it is a nightmare and a terror for our residents and our families to simply walk out front in the bike lane, to catch a taxi, to catch an Uber, to a doctor's appointment, or to simply get some fresh air, I would say it's an understatement. The safety of our residents is deeply affected by the lack of regulations in the bike lane. And by the way, I want to mention that I am also a cyclist. I commute to work on an e-scooter. So I'm pro cycling, pro safety, pro common sense. We absolutely need to have a hearing about Priscilla's Law. We really need to get these e-vehicles regulated. We have to have some accountability. There's absolutely no other way to move forward in the city. It's a public safety issue at this point. I have seen countless people be injured, and New York's most vulnerable population, the elderly, they're being targeted mostly by this, and it's deeply concerning. Please support us on this. Please support us in having a hearing for Priscilla's Law. And thank you on behalf of Carnegie East House.
Thank you. Okay, Andrew Fine is next, I believe.
Thanks, Chuck. Really appreciate it. I'd just like to say, this is really a common sense no-brainer. What we're asking for in this legislation, both on the city and the state level, is a basic level of accountability. We have e-bikes running willy-nilly, Wild West, all over the place. Everybody knows it. We've either been hit or we're the next ones to get hit. Nobody on this call has not had a close call or been hit by an e-bike. Am I right on that? I think I am. The reality is we're just asking for a basic level of accountability. And the E-Vehicle Safety Alliance, which I'm happy to be part of and one of the 1,100 members and one of the first, of our membership, 94 people have been hit by e-bikes or e-scooters. Out of those 94, 91 were hit and runs. And guess what? There's no plates, there's no accountability. Who gets stuck with the medical bills at the end of the day and the disability at the end of the day and the terror where they can't walk the streets anymore? The victims. We're asking for accountability. If we have plates on e-bikes and electric scooters that go 40 miles an hour, then we would have a function where there might be some accountability, and this level of accountability will actually translate to a change in behavior. And this change in behavior We are not anti-e-bike. We're not anti-bike. We love bikes. We have 200 of our 1,100 members that are regular cyclists, just like Carrie here. And at the end of the day, if we have accountability, if we have plates for these bikes, they will behave in a different manner. There were 30 people killed on bikes last year. 23 of those people were on e-bikes. And you can bet your bottom dollar that a lot of those people would be alive today if they didn't feel like they had absolute impunity and could run wild on the streets and run every red light and go down the sidewalks and everything else. We, the E-Vehicle Safety Alliance, nycevsa.com for the record, are a pro-safety organization. We just want pedestrians, cyclists, e-bikers, motorists of all kinds to be safe and be, and not get killed. And we have people that have been killed. And this whole argument that you shouldn't be accountable because it's racist is ridiculous. The reason why cars and trucks have license, registration, insurance, and inspection is so that they're accountable. And guess what? 95% of them don't run red lights, unlike e-bikes, which run them constantly. They're a danger. They are injuring us. And we have legislation that is common sense. And 90 out of 100 people that you ask, especially 100 out of 100 people that are at least 50 years old, will tell you that this should happen immediately. We have 31 out of 51 council members who have signed on to this bill. And we can't even get a hearing because of the special interests, the bike lobby. They call it the bike lobby, but the bike lobby is controlled and funded by the likes of all the apps: DoorDash, Uber Eats, Lyft, Vera Mobility, you name it. So at the end of the day, Lyft wants as many bikes on the street as possible. And the argument that we get from the bike lobby is that they're safer in numbers. And the more numbers they have, they'll have as many numbers as they possibly can get on the street. And they don't want accountability because that might actually discourage riding. Well, guess what? At the end of the day, if we're going to discourage riding by completely lawless, I won't use a curse word, but sorry, a fill in the blank with a number of other letters. If we discourage riders from riding like idiots, then that's a good thing, okay? And at the end of the day, all we're asking for is accountability, and we want safety. And if we get accountability, we'll get better behavior, we'll have less lives lost on the street, and we'll have less victims like we have 94 victims in the E-Vehicle Safety Alliance. Thank you for your time.
You, Janet Schroeder, I think, is next.
Hello. Hang on one second here.
Yep, you're on.
Because it won't, unable to access camera. Okay, I'm not sure why I was gonna get on here. I am the co-founder and actually the leader as well of E-Vehicle Safety Alliance. And as Andrew said, we have just shy of 1,100 members now, growing by the day. We have over 25 of our members are avid cyclists, including professional cyclists and people like Carrie who raise money cycling thousands and thousands of dollars every year, cycles her whole life and has more bicycles than anybody I personally know. We like bicyclists and we like cycling, and we are not anti-e-bike whatsoever, Liam. We have over 90 victims, which include pedestrians, cyclists, and even a few e-bikers in our group. And some of our victims' collective injuries, we will start with Priscilla Loke, who was killed by an e-city bike rider while she was legally walking in a crosswalk in Chinatown. That is why it's called Priscilla's Law. It's in honor of her and all the others killed by e-bikes, on e-bikes, on, people injured, throughout New York City by these e-vehicles. We have one paralysis, as Ron mentioned. Pam Manasseh lost her livelihood and is paralyzed on the right side of her body. We have 57 broken ribs, 22 skull fractures, 16 traumatic brain injuries, 8 brain bleeds, 5 with loss of vision, 11 with broken legs, 4 with broken hips, and countless lacerations. Hundreds of broken bones, including clavicles, shoulders, feet, hands, wrists, and every single one of these victims has PTSD. And these injuries aren't over. They continue and continue and continue every day. Small fraction of the thousands upon thousands, yes, Liam, thousands upon thousands, because we have ER doctors in our group. Dr. Angelo Maschia, who came with us to meet Mayor Adams a couple weeks ago, is an ER doctor at the Trauma Center at St. Barnabas Hospital. He calls this a public health crisis. And I can quote Dr. Angelo Maschia, M-A-S-C-I-A, on that. He says it needs urgent attention, and he backs regulation of all e-vehicles. He can't understand why anybody wouldn't want to hold accountable every single rider on the street. We are not anti-bike. Like I said, we are not anti-e-bike. We are pro-safety for all. We have no other agenda because we're not paid. We aren't funded. Nobody can take our narrative and tell us we have some agenda other than safety for all. We are simply a group that represents the majority of New Yorkers, and we want regulation of e-vehicles. So we strongly support Priscilla's Law, 0606-2024, for registration of all e-vehicles. Again, it honors Priscilla Loki. She was killed walking legally and when her family called City Bike to tell them that she was killed, they said, nothing we can do, it's on the rider. The rider fled, stuck around for a while. They found him 2 weeks later. He ended up getting a red light ticket. But that's City Bike for you. Zero safety accountability for their riders. Pretty much no training at all. Just get on a bike, do whatever you want. Tourists coming in, commuters, people getting on a bike for the first time. Half of them don't even know the rules, and the ones that do know that they're not going to be held accountable to them. While City Bike makes millions off of this irresponsible, dangerous City Bike share program. But as may have been mentioned, City Bike is a big donor to transportation alternatives. So if you follow the money, it all makes sense. We have an absolute crisis on our hands. It's rarely been addressed from the point of view and from the victims. Liam mentioned how Ligia and that group should be here. I know Ligia fairly well, met with her many a times.
Could you sum up, please?
Yeah, the victims are the ones that should be here. We only had 2 tonight because we didn't have much notice. But like Andrew said, 94 victims, 3, all but in 4 of the cases, the rider fled. So license plates are what's going to identify those. But there are 4 points I'm going to make, okay? Because people talked a long time. TransAlt silenced our victims last year. We had 34 people that had signed, 34 council members that had signed Priscilla's Law. And they wrote that allowed us a supermajority. And they wrote all of the council members and told them why they should get off the bill. 2 of them did. And that silenced our victims from just getting the hearing that they deserve. And they knew that would happen, okay? Because they want more ridership at all costs. And the cost is these victims. So TA says it's unfair to people of color. You know what's unfair to people of color? To continue to allow them to ride with no accountability because they're putting themselves in harm's way. 30 biker deaths last year, 23 were on e-bikes, and seven of those e-bikers hit stationary objects.
There are a lot of people who want to speak. Please.
Okay, can I finish up though? So that was one of the things that TransAlt, that's one of their things. May I just say one more point, please? May I please finish just one more point? Because I am a voice
of the majority. One more point.
Okay. I mentioned the people of color, right? That could not be more wrong. We care about people on e-bikes too. We actually do. The views that TransAlt has, we find as ageist and ableist because they're not thinking of disabled people. They're not thinking of older people. And Priscilla's Law needs to be put in place before there's any promotion of any new ridership plans by City Bike or anything else. The cost of more ridership without addressing accountability and safety, our people's lives, our disabled people's lives, our elderly people's lives, dogs, serious injuries, and our quality of life. Common sense bill. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, listen, I want to ask everyone to have your say, but let's not go into long, drawn out things. There's a lot of people here. And don't give me that look, Andrew, because everyone's going to be heard. But we're not going to go on and on and on making the same points over and over again. Oliver, Brooke.
And I'll just remind everybody that you should be addressing the chairs and you should not be commenting on or talking about other people who are in attendance. Just good decorum is to talk directly to the chairs and give your testimony.
Okay, I'll try to keep myself short if I can. Still living here in the area, still with my disabled daughter. I'm in two minds about this legislation completely. I think on the one hand, it does not go far enough, and on the other hand, it goes way too far. I'll explain. I am European from origin, and compare this to situation in other legislations where bicycles with an e-motor that have no throttle can go a maximum of 50 miles per hour and have no behave like a normal bicycle, are considered a normal bicycle, and they go at the same speeds as a normal fit rider would go on their normal bicycle. They are mostly used by people who are too frail, too weak, like my disabled daughter, like my frail mother, who can't ride a full bicycle anymore. Now, to burden this demographic with additional paperwork just so they can ride a bicycle is an insult. Well, if you have to deal with all the paperwork for the medical system here, the care system here, the education system for disabled people here, you know what I'm talking about. We're inundated, and a disabled person will be discouraged from using a bicycle instead of registering it. That's not fair. That's like standing at a park entrance saying, if you can't jump a meter high, you can't come in here, right? We do not want that. Now, therefore, I think this goes too far. Where does it stop? Do we also want to regulate mobility scooters and motorized wheelchairs? No, not all e-vehicles are the same. So I think this goes too far. On the other hand, elsewhere, class 3 e-bikes do not exist, right? Anything that goes faster than 50 miles per hour anywhere in Europe is considered a moped. It needs registration, and not just that registration, it needs also a license. It needs insurance, and the rider needs to wear a helmet. And with that, I agree, actually. I think category 3 e-bikes here are an abomination. The category shouldn't exist, shouldn't be allowed. Vehicles, two wheels or not, that go more than 20 miles per hour on a throttle, so you hardly have to lift a finger to go that fast, are not bicycles. They're mopeds. They should be regulated and treated like mopeds. And this is where I say registration doesn't go far enough, because registration still doesn't give us insurance. It doesn't give us license, which means training for the riders, or mandatory helmets. So currently, as the legislation is proposed, I think it's wrong. I would reject it. I think we need a more nuanced approach that targets the right behavior for the right kind of vehicles, and doesn't punish people unintentionally on the sidelines in a vindictive campaign to treat all e-bike riders the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, let's go to Betsy Rowe. Betsy, you have to unmute yourself. See your problem.
I tried and it said you had to, but anyway, I am a victim. I had injured my knee and I was walking very cautiously on 81st Street between Park and Lex, and I was looking right in front of me. So I did not see an electric scooter with a delivery bag come right at me and knock me down. I went into shock immediately, and I waved the guy off. And at the time, I looked at what his bag read, and it didn't stick with me. So, but I know it was a restaurant. So I waved him off and I said I was fine. And I got home, I went to sleep, got up the next morning and I couldn't move. To make a long story short, I had broken 9 ribs and spent 4 days in the hospital. And fortunately, my husband is employed and I am old enough to be on Medicare. So we had 2 insurance companies who took care of my $140,000 bill from Weill Cornell. What if I didn't have insurance? Someone's got to be held accountable. And e-vehicles, again, they go way so much faster than they should, especially for frail people who are trying to just go and run their errands in Manhattan. Thank you.
Thank you. There's Evelyn David, I believe. Can we unmute Evelyn?
Evelyn, you should be able to unmute.
Okay, did that work? Yes.
Yep.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Thank you for calling on me. About time is all I can say. You know, in France, if you buy one of those little scooters or vélo cyclette, whatever it's called, anyway, they all have little tags on the back, okay? That's all the kids have them. Everybody's got a little license plate on the back. It is no big deal. This stuff about it's racist. It's not racist. These guys drive for companies. They pick up food. Get the companies to do. Make the price for getting the license plate not so expensive. Big deal. I mean, good grief. The number of times I've stood on the corner and watched these guys go through lights the wrong way with the policeman standing there, and we look at each other, and the first time this happened, I said, can't you do something? Are you able? He said, no, we're not allowed to do anything. We cannot do anything. There's nothing we can do. Okay. And then I thought, all right, well, watch out. Okay. That signal to me was watch out, be careful. So obviously everybody's watching out, treading carefully. If I were the group that had 1,000 people, I would get the news. I would get everybody out on the front steps of City Hall and not stop until the city council comes out and says, we'll have a hearing. I mean, I would do something very proactively. You know, this is not an attack on bikers. It's just for safety and common sense. That's all. That's all. And making such a big deal about it. My goodness gracious. You're trying to protect people, okay? And if the fines are big enough for ramming into somebody, the bikers will be very careful. You know, that's all. Anyway, thank you very much for this discussion. If I were those 1,000 people, I'd be on the phone every single day calling their council people to get the bill out there, at least have a hearing. And all the people that have spoken tonight, they should go down to the city council. You can go down and be heard, okay? And ram it, just tell them, okay? We're not going away until you do something. Anyway, thank you very much for the attention and for actually having this talk. Okay, very, 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 very good idea. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Evelyn. We're going to go to the board now. Sebastian first had his hand up for a while. Patient. Board members have been patient here. Go ahead, Sebastian.
Thanks, Chuck. I just have a question about our prior discussions on this topic. My understanding is that the board passed a resolution in July of 2023 that addressed some of the topics that we're discussing here today. Would you be able to summarize what we resolved in that discussion and how it compares to the legislation that's currently being considered? It looks like there's quite a lot of overlap in terms of what the board has already resolved on this topic.
Right, Sebastian. I don't know. Will, do you have the resolution? We'll put it up here. Let's see. Let's see what this is here from July 2023. Okay. It was the use of e-bikes and moped, whereas pedestrians are feeling increasingly threatened by e-bikes and mopeds that operate at high speeds, whereas e-bikes and mopeds are also frequently witnessed operating in unsafe and illegal manners, including being driven on the sidewalks in the wrong directions on roads, and mopeds using bike lanes they're prohibited from, and whereas enforcement police of e-bike and moped use is insufficient and unable to discourage bad behavior, and whereas the lack of license plates and registration of e-bikes is seen as a barrier to proper enforcement, and whereas the lack of insurance and requirements for e-bikes and mopeds is seen as problematic when injuries are caused by them without any responsibility being borne by the owner-operator, whereas e-bike and moped use is largely driven by e-commerce and restaurant deliveries, and the business owners and delivery services should bear responsibility for employees working under their direction who use e-bikes and mopeds, and whereas the recent pilot program that allows e-bikes to be used in New York City parks such as Central Park has adversely impacted the experience of park goers who feel threatened by bikes operating at fast speeds. Therefore, did resolve that Committee Board 8 calls for license plate, registration, and insurance requirements for e-bikes and mopeds. Further resolve requests laws requiring that all e-bikes and mopeds be registered before allowed to leave stores at which they are sold, and be further resolved that where violators of safety rules are in the course of their employment by a restaurant or delivery service, Community Bike Board 8 calls for the penalty to be enforced against the business/service and not the operator, and be it further resolved that the Community Board 8 calls for the immediate suspension of the pilot program that allows e-bikes to be operated within Central Park. And that was passed on July 19th by a vote of 32 in favor, 8 opposed, 2 abstentions. So it was directed toward e-bikes and mopeds. The legislation here is directed to e-bikes and e-scooters, essentially, and they're specific. That's obviously specific thing to for the council as well as the assembly. Sebastian, so that's where it is. So everybody can see that, hopefully.
Okay, thank you very much, Chuck, for that summary. I appreciate you reading that and seeing that we have addressed much of this in the past, and it's good to know that the board has given a clear message to our representatives. Great that we have attended to this one. Thank you.
Well, Lita Camp is next. Lita?
Thank you, Chuck. And thank you to all of the speakers who've come tonight on this important topic. I'd like to propose a resolution, and if seconded, I'll speak to it. The resolution is 2 parts, one calling on the City Council and the Speaker to bring it to a hearing, and the other calling for passage in the state legislature of this important legislation.
Is there a second to that? Yes, I see Michelle in a second. Okay. Go ahead.
She's waving her hand too.
Go ahead. It's been seconded, so go ahead, Alita.
Thank you. First, in the city charter, there's a requirement to support the health and safety of New Yorkers. Given that this directly relates to health and safety of New Yorkers, as we've heard by all of the people who've testified here and in other venues, it would seem to be essential and call upon Adrienne Adams to bring this before the City Council and to call for a vote. It is inexcusable to me that she won't do it when there are so many people in favor of this, including, I think Andrew said 31 out of 51 city council members. With respect to the state, I also believe, as Andrew said, it's a no-brainer. It affects the health and safety. We register to vote. The city bike system, you register your credit cards. That's certainly far more intrusive than simply registering your bike. They have all of your financial information. We register to go to a doctor or a hospital or a dentist. You register in so many places, and it makes people accountable, as everyone has said, and I don't want to be redundant. So by holding people accountable, there is a theory, I think it's been well accepted, that there is responsibility, that people will stick around, or that it will be easy to track them. I know that there are cameras everywhere. I served on a grand jury, and I know that for true. So there will be a way to track people down if they hit and run, which bike riders tend to do from what I've heard. So I would urge that this resolution be passed. Thank you.
Thank you, Lita. Then we go to Ed Herzog. Herzog, sorry, Ed.
Thanks, Chuck. Yeah, I support Alita's resolution. I think it's common sense, and I was just going to say that yeah, I'm for the responsibility here. I mean, it is it's Thunderdome. I've said it before. I'll say it again. It is Thunderdome, and it's appalling. It's shocking. The idea that the cops can't enforce this, it's totally lawless. Again, if you spend any time on the streets of New York City, in our neighborhood, this community district, you see it. You know, no one's against the bike lanes, but the problem is that they're in the bike lanes, they're on the sidewalk, they're back. You know, if the bike lane is clogged, the bike has no problem swinging out 4 lanes, you know, in the middle of traffic, swerving out into traffic and swerving back into the bike lane. And like they said, like I think it was Ms. David said before, you know, the cops just stands there and nothing happens. I saw it today, crossing 73rd and 2nd, same thing. Anyway, I support Elisa's resolution. You need to insure these bikes. Again, people have heard me on this topic too. Someone mentioned it before, but we all know, money talks. Okay, you have the best government money can buy, and I'll just leave it at that. And everyone here is smart enough to know, especially in this community district, what I mean. So, you say it doesn't, campaign finance doesn't matter. Use your eyes in the streets today, and Transalt and 100,000 more Uber cars, and the cops aren't enforcing anything, and I won't go on. I just say that I support Alita's resolution. I would call the question, but I've gone on, and I'm a yes all the way around. And for insuring these bikes and put it off on the apps that are behind this, and maybe it will stop the lawlessness and the impunity that people feel when they get on these bikes.
By the way, just for the record, the legislation doesn't call for insurance, it calls for registration, licensing.
We should have insurance. I would call for insurance because otherwise there's no skin in the game.
We already said that. We said that in our resolution passed. We have called for it.
Chuck, hey, don't shoot the messenger. Just saying, buddy, that we should have insurance and that there should be some accountability here, financially speaking. Because this lady who just got $150,000, my God, the guy's speeding away. Anyway,
okay.
And go to the bar association, you and I, Chuck, and we'll have a nice insurance CLE on this, and we can talk about it there.
Paul, quickly.
I think this kind of legislation is misguided, and I think it's a massive distraction from the real issue of all the death and carnage on our streets, and to do something about that. Just to remind folks, there are between 200 and 300 people killed in our streets, and people being pedestrians, cyclists, and people who drive cars in events, crashes involving cars. And tens of thousands of people are injured on our streets every year. And this is by cars and drivers. Drivers have insurance, they have a license, they have registration of their vehicles, all these things, the ultimate accountability we have already for cars. So I fail to see why on earth anyone thinks that adding these layers of complexity to mopeds and e-bikes will do anything at all to address the real issue here. I find that staggering. I'll remind you all, for this community board, Craig gave us some numbers a few months ago. The three numbers I quote each time I want to reach out for them is 10, 41, and 5,500. In the last 10 years in our district alone, 41 people have been killed in our streets and 5,500 injured, often brutally injured. This is the real issue here. This is the death and carnage we're facing. I don't see why anyone thinks this kind of legislation will do anything about it, so it's a distraction in my mind. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Paul. Michelle Birnbaum.
Yes, well, just to say, can you imagine? And there are so many more cars than bikes. And if the cars had no license plates, what would happen on the streets? Look, it's unconscionable to have something with a motor and have no accountability, responsibility, and liability. I'm disappointed that this bill doesn't go further and ask for insurance. It absolutely should. In terms of the big hardship that it is to file the paperwork for this, you have to file paperwork to get a fishing license, a dog license. This is the bigotry of low expectations. People are perfectly capable of filing for the paperwork for things that they need to do or things that are required by law. So that's just a ridiculous argument that it's a big imposition. At any rate, this absolutely, we should support this. My only concern here is I understood that licensing is really only in the hands of the state. So I'm not really understanding. I support this. I would love the city council to do something about it. I've been working on this issue since 2006. So I'm glad that EFSA came along and really took it and did something with it. But my understanding is it was a state issue. So I absolutely support the state bills. If the city council has any say, I'm very happy to have them support it. And from my point of view, it's not relevant tonight because that's not what we're voting on. But I think we should have something maybe at a later date, talking about the issue of liability and maybe sort of move to get this part of the program. But I absolutely support the resolution tonight. If anybody has further definition about the city involvement, I'd love to hear it just as a matter of information. But I encourage everybody to vote yes on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Rita Popper?
Call the question.
Okay. Anybody object to calling the question at this point? Okay, Ed seconds it. Okay. All right. So if you're in favor of this resolution, you don't have to do anything. Craig, do you want to call the roll just to make sure who's here?
Yes, could we lower the hands? So we have myself, Chuck, Alita, Ed, John McClement, Judy, Lori, Michelle, Paul, Rita, Sebastian, Stephanie.
Okay. If you're in favor of this, you don't have to do anything. If you're opposed or abstaining or not, or any other reason, raise your hands. So, okay. So we have Paul Crickler.
No.
And Sebastian.
Vote no.
Okay. Any other hands raised? For board members?
I am a no also.
Okay. Okay. So there are 3 no's. I get this passes and will be brought before the full board 2 weeks from today. And we thank all of you for your participation, and we'll see where things go. Okay. Next, do we have, I don't know if Colleen is here, if we have a report from transportation.
Colleen is out on vacation, I believe, but she has sent us a wonderful understudy in Jackie.
Thank you, Will.
Jackie,
Good evening, everyone.
why don't you go ahead, Jackie, and see if there's any updates you want to give us.
Sure. So, no major updates at the moment. I did want to just point out that we do have Trick or Treats coming later this month for Halloween. I don't believe there are any locations within CB8, but just for any of those that want to venture out, we do have that event happening on Halloween. But other than that, there are not really any updates for me to give at the moment. But happy to take any questions.
Okay, thanks. Well, let's see if is there any other business that people want to bring up at this point? Michelle, we have Jackie's here if you want to.
Yes, it's for Jackie. I actually wrote to Colleen, and if she's away now, I understand why I haven't heard, but I'll just give it to you, let you know, Jackie, just so it's on your radar too. Colleen is very familiar with the location of the northwest corner of 2nd Avenue and 89th Street. This is a restaurant that attached on 2 sides, both on the 89th Street side and on the 2nd Avenue side, attached a structure to their storefront. So it's not a cafe, it's not a street cafe, it's not a roadbed cafe. They attached a fully permanent structure to their storefront that is covered on all sides, including a ceiling, having a raised floor as well, and a ramp in. Now, the DOT, thanks to Colleen, went after them. I believe that they were ticketed, and in fact, that structure came down. And I said, oh, terrific, it's down. Passed by it last Friday, and they have rebuilt.
Oh,
now,
wow.
I don't understand under what logic that was. The original structure was permanent. It was beautifully constructed. It was tongue and dowel construction. I watched it go up. So I know they paid a fortune for it. Illegal as it was, they paid lots of money to get it built. I imagine it cost them a lot of money to take it down. I imagine they did that because it wasn't there legally. I can't fathom what the rationale is for putting another one up. So if you can check on that location, I don't know when Colleen will be back, but it's the northwest corner of 2nd and 89th. It will be obvious to you.
Sure, and I will definitely look into that, and I will also put my contact information in the chat, Michelle, if you just want to reach out to me directly. That way we can, I can update you more easily.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other business? Okay. Seeing none, we ready to adjourn? Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. We are adjourned.
Michelle, I'll send you an email with Jackie's contact.
Yeah, I was just checking and I don't see it in the chat. If you email it to me, that'd be great. Thanks, Will.
Great. Thank you, Will.
All right.